Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about the importance of vacations and the processes behind the scenes to be able to take a nice vacation or time off from our business. So let's start the class. This is a really cool class. It's one of my expertise. I used to work for more than 10 years in international companies and doing international trade and also marketing. But in some of these international companies that they were making businesses in another countries, they have a hard time to understanding the policies and processes of those countries. And in order for them to understand, we have to create a lot of times these internal procedures, internal processes, preventive, corrective, predictive maintenance, sorry. And during my experience, I realized that a lot of small business owners think that internal processes are more related to big companies, right? And they feel like they don't need to do that because they're so small. But really, this is something that you can apply to your small business for sure. Of course, it's not going to be in a big scale like in a big company, but there are a lot of systems you can put in place to improve the efficiency of your business. And especially because, and we're going to see some statistics about small businesses and how important is to set up these processes in order to not just to take a vacation, but just have more free time and target areas of stress that small business owners tend to have. Okay, so let's start. And I want to just to remind you about the roadmap. It's a tool that business and industry create for small business owners to have instruction about what to do or where to go. This is a great tool, and I'll give you the link at the end of the class for you to visit this roadmap. And I strongly recommend if you're just starting or you are in a stage of your business that you don't know where to go, this is a good source for you. Okay, the outline for today, we're going to discuss mainly 4 topics. Why business processes matter. We'll discuss how to establish procedures. We're going to talk about preventive, predictive, and corrective maintenance. We'll see the difference between them and how we can apply them to our small business and why are important to our small business. And we're going to talk about problem solving for small businesses. I think this is a very important to develop these soft skills for yourself, and in order to create a good organization, a good teamwork, you need to know a little bit about problem solving. So we're going to talk about that. Then I'll provide an action plan for you, and I'll give you some resources that might be good also if you want to just double check. Okay, again, sorry, my name is Reyna Mendez, and if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A, and Juan will let me know if I have a question because I'm not able to see the chat. Okay, so let's start with our first. Before to start with our first topic, I want to give you some statistics and some things that you need to consider. 57% of small business owners do take vacation, okay, according to OnDeck, a study from OnDeck. So 57% of small business owners do take vacation, but the problem is the 66% of small business owners find it difficult to take this time off. And not just only, they're not only think that it's difficult, they struggle to take this time off. They do take it, the 57% do take it, but 66% find it that it is very hard to take that time off, which means that they're not worry free. Okay, they are going on vacation, but still they worry about the business. And the 39% of small business owners work over 60 hours per week. So they tend to work more in their businesses than in a regular work of 40 hours. And this is very understandable. Okay, we're starting a new venture, we want to be successful, and we have to put as many hours as we can. The problem that I find with this is that sometimes we tend to do more than, we tend to work harder than smarter, okay? And that's because a lot of small business owners lack of these soft skills like problem solving and how to set up processes that can help him or her to have a better time management, okay? So, and have more free time to enjoy other things or to do other things. Remember that as a small business owners, it is very important for you to take care of your mental health or your physical health, because you are, and this happens a lot. We are the person who does everything in our business. We do the finance, we organize everything, we visit the customers, we make deals. Sometimes we're in charge of our own marketing. So it is difficult, and that's why, because sometimes we are only one person, we need to have a better time management skills, okay? And the next one is 85% of small business owners admit to working while on vacation. That's what I was talking at the beginning. Like, okay, they do take vacation, but they're not really 100% enjoying the vacation time because they're worried about their businesses, and they're still working whenever they have the time to do it, and they're not fully enjoying themselves or their family. So this is why one of the main reasons of this is happening is because of internal processes are not being organized. And this is something that we can start to do, we can start to implement. And as basic as it sounds, this can help a lot, okay? And I'll show you how. Why business processes matter. Okay. Like I was saying at the beginning, we think that business process management is exclusive of big companies, but this is not true. There's a lot of systems that we can put in place using business process management for small businesses. So why business process matter? Because it makes your business more efficient first. You're going to eliminate waste and delays, which causes that we're putting more time into our business venture. It's going to facilitate the communication. No matter that you are one person working the whole thing, you still have to communicate with your customers. You still have to learn how to communicate with suppliers. So this is communication is not only with my work team. Communication is also important for my customers and my suppliers. And so it also is going to help you to have more control. And this is when we have problems, because I've seen it a lot. When you are one person running the whole business, and then you start to grow, and then you start to hire people, let's say that you hire one person or two people, then you have problems to let it go, like to delegate tasks. And when you don't have a process system put in place, it's going to take a lot of time for you to train someone, because you tend to forget. And then you tend to think that over time, you're going to teach them everything, okay? So this is going to not just cause you stress, but it's going to cause stress to your employees, okay? Because they're not gonna know what to do, when, where, or what, because you don't have these systems in place. And precisely because you are a small business owner, because your business right now is small, now you have the opportunity to create these processes before your business grow. Because once your business is growing, the less time you're going to have to create these processes. It is easier to create something right now, no matter if it is super basic, and they keep adding things to the process that already exist, than have this start to having this this growing company and try to figure it out from scratch. So this is the time for you to implement this. It's going to also simplify the workflow, because if everybody knows what needs to be done, it's a lot easier. You see, when I was working in international companies, we set up our workflow and we put times on it. We put times on the task. So let's say if we were in accounts payable, right, or accounts receivable, we used to call our customers to let them know that their payment was coming, right? And we need to make those phone calls or send those emails out. And we used to say, okay, by 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m., these emails needs to be sent. So that was the way that people know what to do, where, and at what time. Because, and believe me this, when you ask an employee about a particular task and you don't put these systems in place, you know what they're going to answer you? They're going to answer you, I didn't know that need to be done. They're going to tell you, I didn't know. And that's going to be the excuse. That's the one of the main excuses of employees. And they're going to take advantage of that. So that's why it is very important to set up internal procedures, processes, systems of in your business. Because that way they're not going to be able to tell you, I didn't know. Okay, because you already have a workflow system in place. So that's also is going to help you to pinpoint deficiencies in your small business. Because if you set up a workflow in place and you see that this employee is not doing it, it's not going to have more excuses. Okay, so you're going to have reasons to change employee, or write out this employee, or send them a letter about, hey, you're not really doing your duties, you're not complying with the activities that need to be done, and things like that. So that's why it's so important to create these processes. Okay.
Reyna,
Yes.
there was a question or a
Sure.
comment. Do we have to wait until we have employees to establish
No,
this, or should we create this for ourselves already?
create this for yourselves already, because the main idea of establishing processes is to have this free time. Can you imagine if you just, let's forget about the vacation time. That's a nice thing. That's the positive thing, right? I'm going to go to vacation. But let's think about if you have like a health issue in your family, God forbidden. But then you have to be absent of your position, right? And you don't have an employee, but let's say that you have your cousin, your sister, your brother, who is going to take in charge while you are gone for a few days. How they're going to know what they're going to do, right? So you have to create these processes even for yourself. No matter that you do everything on your company, sit down and start to write down your processes. And I'm gonna show you how, okay? I hope I answer your question. Okay, so we're gonna talk about business process management. Business process management is the discipline that allows organization to design, model, and deploy processes, okay? This is how we call it. You don't have to call it like that. I just wanted to give you the exact name for the system that you're gonna put in place, okay? This is business process management, BPM. And it's a discipline. Why is it discipline? Because you have to sit down and really think about through your processes. And it could be as basic as how to open my store. What's the process behind opening a store? Do I have to be there 15 minutes prior the opening time? Maybe I open my store at 9 a.m. and I don't have to be there at 9 a.m. because you imagine that you already have customers outside waiting for you to open your doors. A lot of industries, a lot of companies, they have a policy that the employees have to be there at least 15 minutes prior. Maybe they're cleaning tables, maybe making sure that everything is running okay. Maybe they check the bathrooms, the restrooms, the entrance, okay? Maybe something happened overnight and there's a disaster over there and there's trash everywhere and you don't want to give that the look to the customers, right? So it could be as easy as that, as basic as 15 minutes prior, I'll be there to make sure that everything is correct before opening my doors, okay? So it's as simple as that. It looks simple, but it is very important in reality, okay? So what I think that we have to start with in small businesses is general awareness. And this is what this class is about. I'm trying to provide you general awareness about why these processes are so important for you. So, of course, for big companies, there are processes that are more complicated, there are more detailed, right? Probably for small business owners are not going to be that detailed at the very beginning. Once you start to grow your processes or grow your business, you're going to find out that a process has changed or that you need to implement something different or you need to modify the process that you have. But specifically, I think that small business owners have target areas. And mostly I say finance is one area, marketing, operations, and administration. Why finance? Because a lot of business owners they tend to not be very organized with their payments, their bank accounts. Juan, you can help me more with this. Like documentation, income statements, everything that is about financial. Sometimes they don't get involved with their CPAs or their people who's doing their taxes. And so you can start to create business processes in the finance section of your business. So it is not only for operations. It's mainly used for operations, but finance is also part of your operations. Your marketing is also part of your operations, okay? So these four areas, and I would say mainly finance and operations is when I see, I like that. To me, it's like I see that these are the stress areas for small business owners. Maybe I'm wrong. If you have any other area that you want to share, please share it in the chat or in the Q&A. But I find myself seeing how small business owners struggle in a finance portion of their business and then the operations part of their businesses. So the most important stage for small business owners is the awareness. Okay, they need to understand why they need to establish processes since day one, since they open, no matter they are the solely person working there. Okay, so this is how we put a system in place. Okay, of course there are more, but I'm just trying to make you a basic model for a small business. Okay, because in bigger companies we have more than these four. But I think if you understand these four systems, you should be good. You should be able to start to develop your own processes. So we're going to go now to establishing procedures, and I'm going to explain to you these four systems. Okay, so the first one is to identify what are the processes. Okay, let's get back to the example I was giving to you about the opening the store. Okay, so go 15 minutes early and take a look at your business and say, hey, what is the process that I would like to follow in order for me to consider ready to open for the day? Maybe I need to clean the tables. I need to double check the restrooms. Do I need to check if I have a restaurant that the food is good to go? You know that there's nothing wrong with the equipment that I'm going to use, the kitchen, the fridge, maybe the entrance of my store, if it's clean enough. Do I have to clean? You can, if you have a restaurant, think like you are a customer. Okay, when you enter your own restaurant, what's the process that the customer is going to go through? It's going to see the menu. Is my menu correct? Is this customer is going to go to talk to the cashier to order the food? Okay, so we need to identify first. Okay, we need to walk through our business and the different areas of our businesses. The second system that you're going to put in place is to structure. Okay, you identify everything. Now you're going to write it. Okay, because if you don't write it, you're going to forget about it. So you have to structure, you have to establish sequential steps. And I'm going to show you, it's basically like a flow chart. I'll show you a few examples. So you have to structure, establish your sequential steps. Step number one, I am going to open the door. And it might sound like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. Like how I'm going to just write it that I have to open the door. Well, maybe in the door opening, you realize you have an alarm and that you have to, and you only have like 20 seconds to turn it off before it starts to beeping and you know, or maybe you realize that you haven't provide the code to turn off the alarms. Things like that. It looks like, you know, it's not that important, but we might be missing something that is going to cause a stress later on if we don't write it out. So structure. Then the third system that you have to put in place is to execute. Okay. And this is something that I noticed that there's a lot of failure. Okay. They identify, they structure these steps, but they don't execute them. They say, okay, I have them here, but it's okay, you know, whatever, right? And then the employees, I mean, if you have that attitude, what attitude the employees are going to have? If the business, If the business owner doesn't care to follow his own or her own procedures, why have to do it, right? So you have to make sure that you're executing these steps, okay? So you're gonna carry on the process following the sequential steps, and you're gonna make sure that your employees or yourself are following them. And then the fourth system that you're gonna put in place is gonna be monitoring. And this is very important because that's how you're going to improve. That's how you're going to add something else to your processes. This is how you're going to optimize for better serve your customer, to better deliver your product or whatever your industry is. So these four are essential: identify, structure, execute, and monitoring. Don't worry about, I know this is a lot of, it sounds like a lot of information. You're going to receive these slides, and you're also going to receive the link to the recording of this session. So in case you didn't understand a portion of it, you can go back and replay it or double check. So don't worry about these slides right now. So again, these four systems are basic for you to understand in order to create procedures. If you understand these four steps, these four systems, you're going to be able to create your own procedures. Okay? Let me give you an example. This is a fast food. This is a fast food restaurant example. Okay? And I'll let you know which apps you can use to create these flow charts. Okay. So let's start with the customer. You see, they put like three participants in this transaction or in this situation. Okay, we have the customer, we have the cashier, and we have the cook. So the customers, the process starts when the customer order food. Okay? So the customer is going to go to the cashier to request or to order food, right? And then the cashier, what is going to do? The cashier is going to, of course, listen the customer, is going to listen the order, is going to take the order, is going to charge the customer, and then it's going to provide a receipt to the customer, right? And probably it's going to tell them, I'll call you, or maybe it's going to ask his or her name to call when the food is ready. Okay. So now, in the cook session, the cook is going to receive the order, right? And it's going to cook the food. And then in the second step, he's going to grab the food and is going to place it in the area bag or the delivery area or whatever area is designated, okay? And then the arrow goes back to the cashier, okay? Because the cashier is going to bag the food or going to put the food in a tray if the customer is gonna eat in or if it's gonna eat out. And then it's going to give it to the customer, okay? And then the arrow goes back to the customer and it says the customer receives the order, and that's the end of the process. You can see the circle in red that pinpoints that the process has been done, okay? The process has been closed. So this is, and I like to use this example because I think it's very simple, and this is how you're going to understand better if I put you like a more difficult example, more complex. Okay, we always can go from the basic and then grow to more complex, like to more complexity. Then start really complex and then try to go basic, right? So that's why I'm giving you this example. Now, this is something that we already put in place, that we already identify, that we structure, and that we execute every single day, right? But let's think about for a moment, if I go to monitor this process, what questions I can do to optimize, or why I can observe in this process to make it better. Maybe I'm going to find some stuff like this. For example, in the customer portion of the process, how can we improve his her experience? Maybe the time, maybe I need to double check how much time is taking to complete the process. Maybe I can speed up a little bit this process, right? And then in the cashier portion, maybe I need to think about how much money is in the register. What is the maximum cash that I need to have in the register? And this is very important because sometimes we tend to just navigate during the day, receive payments, and not consider that it can be a robbery. I don't want to be negative, but you always have to set up your maximum allow in a cash register. Let's say that you allow only $1,000. So every time that you reach that one, every couple hours, you monitor the cashier register. And if you find that there's more than $1,000, then someone needs to go to the bank and deposit that $1,000. Okay. I'm just giving you an example of how to improve or optimize a process that already exists.
Reyna,
Yeah.
um, in my experience, I had some clients that were didn't have the right partners. Basically,
Mhm.
they partnered with somebody, and at the end they were stealing money, or you have employees that were stealing money. And I think if you have your design of the processes,
Mhm.
you can visualize better where are the trouble spots and the risk. In some particular examples, there was the same person making the deposits and collecting the money.
Mhm.
So there was too much temptation. Also, the same person was maybe doing the recording of the financial statements and also had access to the money. So that was a risky situation because the numbers were, there was a space to, change the numbers and money can disappear that way.
Right. Yeah. And this is why when you are handling money to your employees, they have access to this, and that's why it's very important, even more important, to set up processes and make sure that people is following these processes and double check them at the end of the day, for example, right? Like make like a reconcile at the end of the day. Um, we tend to do this on medium-sized and bigger companies, like to set up an amount that is allowed in the cashier register to like 1,000 or things like that, right? And to avoid first, like the for the safety first. Let's think in the positive side that our employees are going to be trustworthy and everything is going to be fine, but just for the safety or of our employees, they don't handle that much money in case of a robbery. Okay. So like Juan says, this is something that it needs to be done. In another idea is that the cashier has to make sure that the customer is satisfied. And why the cashier in this case? Because is they're in contact constantly. So the cashier is the person who is going to how to say is going to interact with the customer the most. So you have to make sure that the good experience is delivered right there, and then the food is correctly delivered too. So the person who has the opportunity to do this is going to be the cashier. So you want to make sure that the cashier knows that the guidelines to review this customer satisfaction. Okay.
So the processes will help us pinpoint where can we get feedback from customers,
Right.
where we can collect more information to.
Right. Remember that the process is also pinpoint deficiencies, but also it's going to pinpoint the good things. Okay, maybe you're going to do in this process, you're going to do things that are right, that you don't need to change. But maybe you're not changing anything, you're just adding something, not because it's wrong, but because you want to improve it, right? For example, in the cook section, we might want to talk to discuss with the cook the cooking time. Maybe we can improve that. Maybe we're taking too long in delivering orders, and the way that we're going to help to mitigate that is with the cooking time. And that's something that you need to talk to the cook, not to the cashier, right? Because the cashier is not cooking. And then another way to optimize this procedure is making sure that the cook is using the correct ingredients. Okay. Of course, this is a fast analysis. Okay. I just don't want to go more in depth because I want for you to understand the basics of this. Because, like I said, you need to start with basic stuff, lay out your basic processes, and then go from there to improve them, right? Because you're going to find yourself adding more things. And it gets like that. It really does. I know I talk like this is so much fun, right? It is fun for me. Okay, so this is another example. This is an online store, an online shop. Okay, so we only have two um, two people, well, two systems involved, right? We have the customer and we have our online shop that kind of acts like our sales representative, right? Of course, it's an optimized sales representative, but it still has to fulfill some of the procedures that we want to successfully provide our product or service to the customer, right? So then in our online shop, of course, this customer is going to order something, a product, our service, a service, whatever. And the system is going to receive this order, right? And then the system should be able to know the stock level, right? But then the online shop is going to depend of updates. If you don't take care of your updating your online shop, then you're going to run into trouble, right? So let's say that you have everything in place. So the system recognizes that that product is in stock, right? And then if the system says, yes, I do have this product, it's going to send the order, right? The goods are going to be packed, and then the goods are going to be shipped, right? And that's the end of the order. Now, if there's not enough stock and you already have a purchase, then you're going to need to even back order this, back order it, and or suggest a change. Like, okay, let me tell the customer that I don't have the product right now, that it's going to take 3 or 4 days more of what he was expecting, and see how the customer respond to that. And then if the customer says, you know what, I cannot wait that much, then you're going to have to return the money or refund the customer. And that will be the end of the process, right? It doesn't sound too complicated. And this is the basic layout of an online shop. But if you go through each of these categories, for example, in the portion of shipping and packing, you might find that this particular product needs to be packed in a special packaging. Maybe it's glass, maybe it's something that is really fragile. Okay, so it needs to be packed in a better way than just just place it in a box and then just ship it, right? So that's how you start to identify a structure, execute, and then you have to be monitoring. So I would say that the monitoring portion, it takes work because you have to be attentive. And sometimes like we don't have the time for it, and we tend to forget, and this is very important because like I said, if you start to grow, if you don't fix these little issues, they're going to become bigger. Okay, and they can give you a headache later when you are growing your company. Okay, so that's why it is very important to go through those four systems: identify, structure, execute, and monitoring. If you have questions, let me know. Okay, I was telling you that I recommend for you to use a flow chart because visually it's a lot easier to follow those little sequential steps. If you do like a document, it's more difficult to read it. And people tend to just say, oh, whatever, I'll read it later. But if you create a flow chart, it's visually is more attractive and people will read it easily. Okay. So use flowcharts. Canva is a good source of flowcharts. They have pretty good templates already in their free version. So you just can go to canva.com and sign up for free. The basic version, it is absolutely free. And you have the opportunity to access to a lot of templates. So you don't have to, I mean, you're not good with design, you're like, oh, whatever, I'm not good doing this. Just take one template that is already there and fill it out with your information. Okay. And again, flow charts are more visual and are better instead of just writing all this. I know that you cannot write a handbook in a flow chart. That's gonna be hard, right? But at least the processes, the sequential steps, do it in a flow chart. Like I said, visually is they exist for a reason, and it's because visually they are more appealing to read. Believe me. Okay. So now let's talk about maintenance. This also, I know that a lot of business owners think that this is not important for them. That because they're not a big company, they're not Toyota, they're not, like they don't have to put systems like that, Six Sigma, or quality controls and stuff like that, because they're just a small business. But this is not true. You still have to go through these uh, preventive, predictive, and corrective actions. There's more, but I like these three. I think if you, as a small business owner, you start to understand them and dominate them, you'll be good. You'll be able to catch other type of maintenance when you grow. Okay, so these three are very important for you to kind of be more worry free especially when you, like I said, when you're taking time off, and when your team members know what they need to do, how it needs to be done, and you're able to, before going on vacation or before taking time off, you can go through a checklist in your business, and you can do this, these three maintenance systems, right? And just double check what are the possible problems your team members can run into while you are on vacation, and kind of prepare them for that, or give them a possible solution for it, right? So in the case of preventive, um, prevention is about mitigating potential risks that currently exist. For example, you have a bakery and you have machinery there. You have assets like the blender, maybe the oven, things like that. So if you are notice that the oven is overheating, well, there you go. There's something that you need to address, right? You cannot say, oh, I'll fix it later, right? Because it's something that is very important to run your business. If you don't have an oven working properly, then you're not going to do cakes that day, and then you're not going to have a business that day, right? So you're going to lose money. So you have to be preventive, okay? Prevent situations. Now, preventive and predictive, it might sound the same, but it is different, okay? Predictive, I use it more like to be able to forecast a given situation. For example, if you buy a certain amount of ingredient, of a particular ingredient, let's say vanilla, right? And then maybe that week, as the week goes, you notice that people is requesting more. I mean, that you're overproducing cakes, right? And then you notice that your vanilla is ingredient is you know you have the right amount right now, but according to what's happening during the week is that your productivity is increasing, right? You're making more cakes, so you might think, okay, this vanilla is not going to be enough, all right, because last week I used X amount of vanilla, but I have more production this week. So I'm going to need more vanilla, right? So then I forecast. I forecast to ask my supplier for more vanilla to not run out of vanilla. I don't know if that makes sense. I know it's kind of tricky, but um, with predictive maintenance, you're able to forecast, okay? And I'll show you example of that with the problem solving. And why is it important to predict, especially with supplies? Because if you're not able to, if you're running out of something that is key for your business, that's gonna give you a lot of stress, because you're not gonna be able to deliver the product. Okay, so that's why you have to be always being predicting or forecasting, right? And then corrective actions. How we can do from a wrong situation a right situation, right? So how I'm going to change a specific situation for the better, not for the worse. Okay. So if I have an employee who's not providing the right customer service that I do need, why I'm not training this person properly, or maybe this person is just not the right person, because I already trained this. I already trained this person and it's not giving me the results that I need. Okay, so maybe I need to take corrective action. Maybe I need to remove the person from the position or change it to another different department or a different area and hire the right person for that particular job. So are there remedies? Pretty much. Okay, so how I'm going to come up with a solution of this particular problem, of this particular issue. Okay, so preventive, predictive, and corrective maintenance is going to help us to protect assets because it's going to help us to protect machinery in case or equipment that is important for my business. It's going to help you with risk mitigation because you're going to be more likely to be able to catch a possible problem prior, so you're able to resolve it before it gets really bad. And it can help you to reduce costs because if you provide a proper maintenance to an equipment, the equipment is going to keep going. You know, it's better just to turn off the oven for 20 minutes to be repaired than create a problem with the oven that you're going to need to buy a new oven and it's going to take you 3 or 4 days to get delivered. Okay, so can you see the difference between one and the other? You're going to lose more money not having an oven for 3 or 4 days than just stopping your oven for 20 minutes, 1 hour, and maybe you can set up this schedule prior to opening your business. So even this maintenance can be done before you open in your store, and you don't have to really stop your oven. Okay, so that's why it's going to reduce cost for you.
Reyna.
And yeah.
Oh, we have a question. What is the name of the website?
Canva?
Yes.
Canva.com. Canva.com. Can you write it in the chat, Juan?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and also it's going to help you to train and clear expectations. Okay, so there's not going to be the answer that, oh, I didn't know. I didn't know that this needs to be done because you never told me what my duties were. Okay, so people will know exactly what needs to be done. So they're not going to be able to use that trick on you. So it's going to train and it's going to clear expectations. So what are you expecting for a certain position? What are you expecting from certain employee, right? And even for yourself, what you're expecting from yourself, okay? So this is going to help you a lot into trust that the systems that you're putting in place are going to help you to run your business even if you're not there. I'm not saying that you have to be absent of your business every day, okay? No, don't get me wrong. But it will give you the time that you need to say, I can put my time in other things, maybe in other ventures, maybe in other things that you like, okay? Instead of being worrying all the time about what can go wrong with your business. All right. Any questions about maintenance? I'm going to go to our fourth topic today, which is going to be problem solving tips for small businesses. Problem solving is a skill that you can develop. I mean, you can learn how to resolve issues. And you learn a lot from experience, really. I have a big issue when I was working in this international company. We used to receive I was working for a packaging company, and we were handling like boxes, different sizes of boxes, everything that you need for industrial packaging, we were providing it, right? So we need to, I was working in international, the international operations, and we needed to cross these big boxes through the border, right? Because we were exporting these boxes to Mexico, and these were carton board boxes. They are very delicate, and they were printed already with the name of our customer, because these boxes were already like to package, so it had like the name and the logo of our customer, right? So then we used to receive these full truckloads full of boxes, to send them to Mexico, right? And we used to pass the load from the delivery truck in United States to a Mexican carrier, switch the whole load to a Mexican carrier to send it to Mexico, right? And then we had so many issues with those boxes because we weren't inspecting them, okay? We trust that our supplier was doing everything correct and right. So we didn't put a quality control system in the border before exporting these boxes. And then what happened is that we sent them to Mexico, and there was like I don't know, from 3,000 boxes, 500 were with the logo was off. So it was bad quality. See, we didn't catch it. And we had the problem, of course, first with the customer, because he didn't want the boxes, right? Which is totally fair. But then we run into the problem that we already export those boxes. So we have to bring them back to the United States. And it was like a hassle, right? So we have to come up with ideas to resolve this issue. So we have to put a quality control system in place. That at the end of the day, we were paying extra at the border crossing for our boxes to be inspected. But we were paying extra, but it was a lot better than lose that money already exporting those boxes. So we have to kind of like, measure, okay, what's better? Make this, add this cost right here, or the cost is going to be bigger because this customer is going to be mad and probably we're going to lose this customer, right? So that's how you start to develop your problem solving. And sometimes they come from experiences, but the experiences have to make you grow. Okay, so don't ignore the experiences. Don't ignore a customer who is complaining about something. No matter that sometimes you feel that it is not, you don't give in the importance to it, but it really does have some importance. Okay, so problem solving tips for small businesses. Problem solving refers to find a solution to a complex issue. Sometimes can be complex, like the one that I was talking about, or sometimes can be more about communication thing, right? But learn how to problem solving. It's going to help you to minimize recurring problems. Okay, there are problems that are constantly happening. And the reason why they keep happening is because we're not addressing them properly. We're just letting them happen. Like if you have your restaurant and the restrooms are not clean, and your customers are complaining about your restrooms are not clean, and you keep not addressing that issue, it's going to cost you money because those customers are not going to come back. So it is something that you need to address at the moment and think about the solution, right? Learn about problem solving also can help you to improve your operations in a more efficient way. And it's going to help you to discover the root cause of a problem. And you're also going to be able to identify improvement opportunities. Okay, maybe you don't need to, you're going to do a predictive and preventive maintenance, and you're going to catch the problem before it occurs. Okay. So I'm just going to show you two problem-solving systems that I think they can help you. You can start with this. We're not going to talk about Six Sigma and all that stuff because those are um, more complicated systems. But I think these two are good for small business owners to start to get into the problem-solving skills. One of them is SWOT analysis, which basically has four pillars. It has strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And pretty much you're going to create this layout. Also, you can do it in Canva. You can find this SWOT analysis, different templates and layouts in Canva. And here, do not have to put that many. If you can look, this example is very basic and it's very easy. And it is an example of a Power Fitness Center. And they are just describing a little bit about their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats. And the way that this system works is when you identify these four pillars, you work with them. Okay, you work to, okay, one of my weaknesses is I'm not organized. Okay, I need to work on that. And if I cannot do it, then I'm gonna hire someone or I'm going to give someone else the responsibility of organize me this part of my business because I'm not good at it. And it's okay to recognize that we have a weakness because remember that it is not just about how good I am in things. You also need to be honest with you and say, okay, I lack of this too, and I need to improve this. Okay, because not everything we're gonna do it right. Okay, so this is a good way to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. What opportunities I have? Like, if I already have a business and that business is going great, and I have a cleaning company and it's going super great, maybe I want to try a YouTube channel, maybe I want to diversify my business and I want to start my own cleaning products with my brand. Okay, so that's an opportunity for a target a different market. Okay, so then those opportunities is going to make your business go in different directions and make them grow. Those different ideas that I have. And then what are my threats? Like, for example, in this Power Fitness Center, it says that there are a lot of different restaurants around, so they don't need to really put a juice bar, right? It might work, it might not, but they have like a threat there. So you have to double check, your competition and all that kind of stuff. So SWOT analysis is a really good way to start learning problem solving. And another system that could help you to problem solving is the 5 whys. This is funny because you have a problem and you have to find the root cause of that problem. And these systems help you to go to the root cause because you have to ask you at least 5 times why this is happening. Okay, let's put an example here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The problem is that our client is refusing to pay for a printing job. That's the problem I have. Okay. Now I'm going to use problem solving. Okay. The first why. The delivery was late, so the printing job couldn't be used because I delivered late. But why I delivered late? Because the job took longer than the salespeople expected or that I expected. But why? It took longer? Because I ran out of print ink. And then you go again, but why I ran out? Well, because maybe I use it for a large project and I didn't forecast that another project was going to come and I didn't buy the correct amount of ink, the correct amount of cartridge. Okay. So the root cause that delivery failed that I failed to that customer was not the customer, was that I didn't prevent something that I could. Okay. So then you go to the root cause of a problem, and then you fix it. Then you say, okay, I didn't have enough ink in stock. I'm going to call my supplier and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to forecast the correct ink every time, because I'm going to see how many printing jobs I have during the week, how much ink I use, and then I'm able to forecast. Okay. So the countermeasure, because you always have to find a solution, is that I'm going to find an ink supplier who can deliver in a short notice in case I run out of ink. Because you might, you might already have your supplier, but this supplier that is going to sell cheaper is going to take longer, right? Maybe it's going to take 3 days or 4 days to deliver your ink, but you run out right now. So you need to fix it. So maybe this supplier is going to charge you more, but you're going to resolve this issue. So you have to always try to balance. Okay. Action plan. And there are questions about problem solving. I don't see the chat window, but
We are good.
okay, we're good. So, okay, this is the action plan. I did like this roadmap, and I put it problem solving easy steps to improve your business. But basically, I classify everything that we learned today into just one roadmap. And I divided in 3 different categories: critical thinking, execution, and what you have to keep in mind. Okay. I know this is a small business and that you do a lot of the activities of your business, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to be honest with you. Okay. So your action plan is going to be to identify your problems, identify your processes, identify. That's the first step. Then you're going to analyze, of course, the problems that you have. You're going to brainstorm. If you have team members, if you have employees, if you have your partner, let's say that you have a partnership with someone else, this is something that they need to get involved with. And everybody needs to provide an idea of how to resolve issues, because that way we get more feedback. Okay. And then between everybody, you need to come up with a solution. And the most important thing, you have to take action. Remember, you can learn a lot today, or you don't. Or I can tell you many things, but if you don't apply what you're learning today, you're going to forget about it and you won't do anything. So my intention, or our intention in a small business education program, is for you to be able to apply this in your life, in your business. Because if you don't apply it, then nothing is going to happen. So taking action is as a very important step. And then another thing that I see is that a lot of small business owners fail in the execution. Remember, I was talking about this earlier. Then when you set up your processes, when you create your flow chart, and you have your processes really nice design, but if you don't execute them, nothing is going to happen. Okay. So execution is key. And train, coach your team. If you want to take time off, it is very important for you to train, to dedicate time to train your team members about what needs to be done. and what identify also what are the most common problems they can run into if you are on vacation, and try to make them like a solution plan. Okay, this is what you should do if in case that this happen, in case that you cannot reach me, this is how you can solve it. Okay. So if you don't implement solutions, if you're not implementing processes, and you're not executing, you're not going anywhere. Okay. So you really have to implement, you really have to execute. And you have to keep in mind that in order to make processes, problem solving, training, in order to make every single process in your business successful, you need to have leadership, and you need to create a company culture. I know you're a small business and you think, why do I need to do this? I mean, I'm just, I only have 2 people working here. Well, if you don't believe in your brand, how you expect onboarding people is going to believe on your brand, right? So you have to create a company culture. And no matter that it's a small business, when you have 5 employees, it is important to create this company culture. Because if you already have this in place, if your company grows, then you're going to grow in employees too. And then you're going to grow your brand, okay? And you have to consider human factors. People are not robots, okay? We have issues, we run into problems, we have many things during the day in our families, in our affective circle. So you have to keep in mind those human factors and those human errors, and treat them properly. And monitoring. Yes, you have to monitor everything, and you don't have to be necessarily there to monitor, but it is important to monitor that the places are being, that the processes are being followed, and that everything that you implement is really being executed properly. Okay, I'm going to give you some resources. The first one, Bytrix24. I was looking for apps, business process management apps out there. And I searched for like 10 or 9 yesterday. And I found this Bytrix24, which is free. There's a free version of it. And it's really nice. And I think that you can create like a profile of your company. And it has different tools you can use. Of course, the premium version has more charts and more stuff, but the basic version is really nice. And you can create, you can invite employees there, and then you can create tasks for your employees. Let's say that Monday you create a schedule, and then Danielle is going to do this, and you can schedule hours, and they can go to, they can access to the company profile, and they can just check mark the tasks. Okay, so it's pretty cool, and they have like a free version of it. If you're like into technology and you like to explore that, I think that's a good resource. The name is Bytrix24, and I gave you the link there in the resources in case you want to just double check. Another resource that I want to provide you is Small Business Statistics by the numbers as of 2021. I know there's a lot of questions about businesses right now, how we're dealing with adjusting to post-pandemic situations, and how that is going to affect businesses. What businesses have been affected, and what are the expectations for those businesses this year? So I think it's a good source if you want to just double check in case just want to research about your business. And this book, it is in Amazon Kindle. I have a subscription, so it's for free for me. Well, I have Kindle Unlimited, but it's a good book. Is about business process management, but it focuses in small business and medium companies, and provides like different tools and ideas of how you can implement your business processes. Um, that's it for today. I guess if I have some questions, Juan, comments, I'll give you my email address. It's mendezr@unr.edu. Also, we have econdep@unr.edu. Our link to our website is extension.unr.edu/BusDev.
I'm
Any
punching
questions?
the email and the numbers.
Yes, you'll receive the slides with the information. Don't worry about it. And probably you'll receive also the access to the recording later on for the people who couldn't attend. Sometimes we get people that register and are not able to attend, so we provide the link to watch the session later.
So it's a very interesting topic. It's kind of
I know it sounds a
difficult
lot.
to difficult difficult to begin, but we have to focus on the rewards, which are many.
Right. I will say focus on the basics. Okay. Don't go under sub processes too much. Just try to lay out the basics of your business. And once you have the basic layout, then monitor, then go and okay, I can add this, or I think this is important to add. Okay, I'm gonna do it, right? But start with the basic. Don't get too specific on this. Um, like I said, the important part is to have awareness about why this can help you to improve your time management. Because we really, as small business owners, we don't have the time. And then we have a family and then we have kids and then we want to go to the gym and then we want to do our own stuff. So remember what I said at the very beginning. Work is smarter, not harder. Consider that. See you. Bye.